Welcome to the Bible Forum. Here we are every Sunday night for 2 hours from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, live, trying to help you understand what's going on in this world, and to do that from a biblical perspective. This article is entitled, When We Don't Fully Understand. The issues here have to do with bringing every thought into captivity to God. To live is Christ, and to die is gain. But certainly not by your own hand. Taking a life is called sin. Entering into the presence of God with sin on your heart, I really wouldn't want to do that. On the other side, we have associate pastor, author, mental health advocate, founder of Anthem of Hope. Anthem of Hope being a faith-centered organization dedicated to helping people overcome depression, anxiety, addiction, self-harm, and suicide, by the name of Jared Wilson, who became a mental health advocate and co-founded an organization dedicated to suicide prevention. But we learned this week that he has just taken his own life. A young man in his mid-30s. Wilson was an associate pastor at Harvest Christian Fellowship in California, author of multiple books, co-founder of something called Anthem of Hope, a faith-centered organization dedicated to helping those battling depression, anxiety, self-harm, addiction, and suicide. He was also a popular speaker. So what happened? Well, Greg Laurie, pastor of Harvest Christian Fellowship, is the one who broke the news of Wilson's suicide. He said, "It is with the deepest, sadness and shock that I have to report that Jared Wilson went to be with the Lord last night. At a time like this," he says, "there are just no words. The Bible speaks of a time to mourn. This is certainly that time." Wilson, 30 years of age, is survived by his wife, Julie, his 2 young sons, Finch and Denham, and his mother, father, and siblings. Laurie wrote, "Jared loved the Lord and had a servant's heart. He was vibrant, positive, and was always serving and helping others. Jared also repeatedly dealt with depression and was very open about his ongoing struggles. He wanted to especially help those who were dealing with suicidal thoughts. But tragically, Jared took his own life." As an aside in all of this, the question becomes, do Bible Christians take their own lives? Doesn't that sound like that's an opposite issue? You're a Christian, you have the life. God has given you new life. You take your own life? Well, the answer is yes, they do. But then becomes the question, why? What is it that attracts them to suicide? Suicide is not a pleasant thought. Well, underneath all of it is hopelessness. People commit suicide when they have decided, when they are convinced that the world would be a better place without them. When they are convinced that there's no hope, there's no way to avoid what I'm going through, and I can't do it anymore. But isn't all that the reason for salvation? Isn't all that the remedy for hopelessness? And the answer is yes. Wilson joined Harvest Christian Fellowship 18 months ago. And according to Greg Laurie, he, quote, had spoken out many times on this very issue of mental health. Sometimes, he said, people may think that as pastors or spiritual leaders, we are above the pain and struggles of everyday people. He says we are the ones who are supposed to have all the answers. But we do not. At the end of the day, pastors are just people who need to reach out to God for His help and strength each and every day. He went on to say people often speak out about what they struggle with the most. One dark moment in a Christian's life cannot undo what Christ did for us on the cross. Romans reminds us that, quote, nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus, Romans 8:39. He continued by saying, at times like this, we must remember that as Christians, we do not live on explanations, but on promises. We fall back on what we do know, not on what we don't know. We do know that Jared put his faith in Jesus Christ, and we also know that he is in heaven now. The day he took his own life, Wilson tweeted about suicide prevention. He wrote on Monday, 800,000 people lose their life to suicide each year, and we want to do something about it. On Monday, he also wrote, officiating a funeral for a Jesus-loving woman who took her own life today. Your prayers are greatly appreciated for the family. One of his final tweets, written late in the afternoon on Monday, read, loving Jesus doesn't always cure suicidal thoughts. Loving Jesus doesn't always cure depression. Loving Jesus doesn't always cure PTSD. Loving Jesus doesn't always cure anxiety. But that doesn't mean Jesus doesn't offer us companionship and comfort. He always does that. And after that, he killed himself. Now keep in mind there are at least two types of depression and anxieties. One is born of genetic predisposition. David was prone to serious, painful introspection. The other is born of a form of selfism, a destructive introspection. The Christian is called to live a life of giving, expecting nothing in return. That is the definition of love as God gives it. The love God gives uplifts, it encourages, it motivates. Human love is often more introspective, self-oriented, and not the least confusing. Pastor Laurie ended by writing, quote, if you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, please reach out for help. He included the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline phone number. A GoFundMe campaign was set up for Wilson's wife and 2 children. In juxtaposition, there is 12-year-old Sari, a girl who has faced severe persecution in her short life. Born deaf to a Hindu family, the young girl found Jesus in healing. But when her family discovered her newfound faith, they beat her and attempted to force her to turn away. Sari's faith remains strong, however, and despite being disowned by her biological family, she has embraced her spiritual family. She says, I was bullied at school for being deaf. We went to the hospital, to Hindu temples, and even to people who practiced witchcraft. Nothing helped. It wasn't until one of Sari's aunts, a Christian, invited her to church that she found healing. Your family members are not believers in the true God, her aunt told her, but I am. Come with me. My God will heal you. And according to the article, he did. And that's when her parents disowned her. Your God is not our God, her mother said. We are not going to believe in your God. People in your church die too, so we won't go to that church. Unfortunately, the rest of her family agreed and began to beat her for attending church. Almost every time I went to church, she said, my brother and father beat me. About 3 months ago, they were fed up with me. My brother and father yelled, if you continue to go to church, we will punish you. They beat and kicked me badly. They gave me some clothes and pushed me out the door. My father said, "You are not our daughter anymore." On the street, Sarie traveled over 6 miles to a relative's house to find safety. But her mother found her and brought her back home, where her older brother beat her again. She refused to deny her allegiance to Christ, however, and managed to escape the home. She made it to her aunt's house, where she's been living for the past several months. According to Open Door USA's 2019 World Watch list, India ranks as the 10th worst nation in the world for Christian persecution. Several reports have come from the country indicating that new converts face arrest or death, and children are beaten, raped, or even killed should their parents convert to Christianity. Suicide, however, is not found to be as rampant among these folks as it is here. Why do you suppose that is?